Hello and welcome to the Where Does It Come From podcast. I'm so excited today. We're going to be talking about a really interesting subject. I've got two fabulous experts with us who I'm going to get to introduce themselves to you in a moment. We're going to be talking about offsetting. So without any further ado, I'd like you to introduce you to Jarvis and Will. Will, would you like to go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your organisation, and also what got you into sustainability in the first place?
Hi, thank you very much for having me today. Yes, I don't know what got me into sustainability. It's kind of weird. I wasn't a public speaker at school at all. I got kicked out, but I did do a talk on climate change when I was 14 to the school, and I did an undergraduate thesis on how people perceive the effect they have on the environment whilst partaking in sports within the Cairngorm region. So weirdly, I'm now living in Scotland. I do snowboard and I work in sustainability, and that was a hospitality degree. So I kind of think it was intrinsic and innate to me. I run a couple of companies, Green Element, which is an environmental management consultancy that I set up in 2004. We help corporates largely to become more sustainable and more environmental, working for the likes of Linklaters, doing all the Grant Thornton's work, working for The Guardian, and a lot of blue chip companies into Public Group, etc. And NatWest actually is a big client, thinking about it, and Coots. Anyway, shut up, Will. And Compare Your Footprints is a carbon reporting software that helps you manage, understand, and benchmark your environmental footprints. I set that up in 2015, and with a view that I knew that every single organization needs to report on those carbon emissions, and they will be putting them onto Companies House, I think, fairly soon. And how are we going to do that? Well, we need to do that as cost effectively as possible. We should not be paying consultants to footprint us. We need to be able to understand exactly what we are producing and what our impact is. Therefore, we can reduce it really easily.
That's fascinating. And just to say, Where Does It Come From? We do use your carbon footprint tool. So it's a really great way of measuring what we do. We haven't gone hugely public with all of that yet, but it's just great to get an understanding when you're talking about fibers and fabrics and all of that. And then the other big F word is freight, of course. For us, it's a biggie. But it's fantastic. And you were such an early starter there as well, doing things at school, which is amazing. And Jarvis, do you want to tell us about yourself, how you got into sustainability, what you do, and all of the other stuff?
Yeah, so gosh, I think intrinsically as a child, I always kind of trod on the earth lightly, but didn't realize it was even a there wasn't anything called sustainability at that time. But later on, I was invited to go onto a TV documentary called Dumped for Channel 4, and I had to live on a landfill for 3 weeks. And really, it was to highlight what is one person's waste is another person's gold, and all about recycling. And it completely changed my outlook on how to live in the world and how to work. So post that, I set up one of the world's biggest magazines called National Geographic Green, which was actually at the time the biggest ethical lifestyle magazine the world had ever seen. And now I publish My Green Pod magazine, which has been with The Guardian for over a decade. We also have a website called mygreenpod.com, which is a hub for people that want to live more sustainably but don't really know where to start. So we made it really easy by bringing together the best products that we can find that are the least damaging to people and planet. And now we have a shop, so you can not only research and find out, but we also sell stuff as well. And we only work with the products that really are not toxic. So, we don't just jump on the plastic thing. We don't just jump on this, that, and the other. We really do curated, authenticated research, because my wife is very, very clever, who's the editor. So she used to be deputy editor at Which magazine and is now our editor. And so she's a proper investigative journalist and knows her stuff. She's been writing about the sustainable movement and ethical lifestyle for, well over a decade, every day. And all of that information is on our website. So we do a plethora of things. I also run the UK's leading sustainability awards called the P Awards, which is People Environment Achievement Awards. And we're now in our 12th year that we've been honouring champions that have made committed sustainable changes in communities and business, etc., etc. So a bit like Will, we were doing it before it was trendy and cool, and now it's trendy and cool. And I guess we're now seen as experts or even thought leaders, which I hate the term because none of it comes from my head. It's all from heart. So there we are.
That's a really interesting. Thank you, Jarvis. That's great. I mean, just to say, as you know, we are Where Does It Come From is on your shop. We've been part of My Green Pod now for quite a long time. And I echo totally what you say about that whole thought leadership thing. You know, it's people who are doing things from the heart and made those decisions to do things from the heart quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
That in a way now people are contacting us and saying, tell us about what you do, tell us what you're about. And it's really great, actually, from being in the wilderness, that suddenly people are interested in what we've been doing and what we're talking about. Personally speaking, I'm fascinated to talk to both of you because you've both come at it from the environmental tread lightly side, whereas I very much came into things from the trade justice side. So it's interesting when the two marry together so much for me. I kind of got into environmental stuff because I realized about the impacts it was having on people in other parts of the world. So it's quite interesting from that point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
And moving on, going back to the environment, we know now from IPCC reports, from COP26 and many things that have been in the news recently, thank God, that we're accepting that we're at a code red for humanity. And as Will was saying, a lot of businesses and organizations are talking about becoming net zero and doing really great things for the planet. What we mean by net zero is that the business they're actually doing creates less carbon than if they weren't doing it at all. That's my sort of simple take on it. So a large part of the way that businesses are trying to do this is through offsetting the carbon that they create in their business, day-to-day business. So Will, first of all, can you give us an overview of how offsetting works and how effective it is?
It's not effective. The good thing about science is that it's true whether you want to believe it or not. So the world doesn't need to focus on opinions or having a view or being puritanical. Preventing catastrophic climate change is about the science, the statistics, the facts, the figures, such as we have at that time. And whether or not the carbon credits are voluntary offset markets are effective mechanisms in reducing global emissions has not been studied enough, nor for long enough for strong scientific set of results to have been produced. So anecdotal evidence and experience, therefore, often informs one's assessment of the validity of the offsets mechanism in providing carbon sinks in the absence of a body of peer-reviewed scientific evidence one way or the other. And whilst the evidence is still uncertain, it is recommended that at the corporate level, funds are invested in decarbonisation within the value chain of the company and in collaboration with stakeholders and cross-sector initiatives to deeply accelerate decarbonisation of infrastructure, transport, heat, and industrial processes. And we've seen that within the science-based targets methodology. They don't accept offsets to get to real net zero. And that is a team of scientists that have come up with that methodology.
It's really interesting, actually. Yeah, I mean, you're right. One thing with science, which doesn't seem to go with the whole social media world that we live in, is it's not about opinion, it's about fact. And IPCC have been coming out with these facts. This is how we are. And yet you get all sorts of people giving their opinion on it. No, there isn't an opinion. You know, this is how it is, and you have to cope with it. I mean, one thing for me with carbon offsetting is if you keep offsetting, it doesn't reduce carbon. Generally does it at all. You might be reducing a particular business's carbon, but you're just moving it somewhere else. It's not reducing it. But no, that's really interesting. Thank you, Will. So Jarvis, from your point of view, firstly, what's your view? But also, can you tell us how it works in practices? And what does a business do to offset their carbon?
Yeah, well, just from the opinion perspective, I mean, it's a bit of a red herring, this road to net zero. I mean, it was built off the back of an old paradigm economy, which is clearly killing us. It's driving us to extinction. So, you know, I think we need to become aware that everybody that's jumping on the bandwagon of whatever the kind of label was at COP26 and whatever else, they're all just red herrings and massive elephants in rooms. What we need is complete systemic change from the pillars of society. And we need to put the eco back in economics. Because what we've got a system that is based on business and selling stuff and people buying stuff. And all of that stuff comes from the planet. So in very simple terms, we are all profiting from the planet's materials, and we're not giving anything back to the planet in that equation. So we've taken. Now the planet can't provide anymore, and now it's having to rebalance itself. So we are seeing, you know, catastrophic change in the climate because the planet needs to do what it needs to do to stay alive. So we are part of a system that is not is just taken and not given back. So that's my opinion-based scenario. In terms of what we can do, it's a very simple equation. It's that because we've taken from the planet, how can we give back and how can we help her to restore? So the most obvious thing is to stop everything that we've been doing and see what happens, right? So we had that situation with the pandemic, brilliant. Everybody got locked away. We started to see air quality come back and, you know, and nature coming back and rewilding and restoring and doing its thing. The problem is it wasn't long enough, but it was the first time humans collectively have seen cause and effect when it comes to climate crisis. So that's fantastic. What we've got to do really is start thinking about what we're buying and whether it's essential.
Yeah.
Who we're buying it from and whether that company cares for our future generations or not. Governments are in a really sticky situation because they're so short term in the leadership. You know, they're only ever thinking 4 to 10 years ahead. You know, we need to be thinking in 500,000 years ahead. You know, the next 7 generations is that classic indigenous scenario. So we've all got into this short-termism thinking. So the thing that we can do individually is just to have a little bit or a lot more consciousness about what we're buying, who we're buying it from, and whether we really need it. Can we buy something that's already been made? Because that is obviously much less resourceful than having to make something new. So, you know, we're massive charity shoppers and eBay shoppers and, you know, all of that stuff, which is fantastic, and grow our own and make your own and stuff like that. If you need to buy something and it's got to be, you know, you've got to get it. Yeah, I like the toilet roll or, you know, shampoos. I mean, these are real first world problems, right? But, you know, let's talk about it because we are talking to a UK audience. Then buy from companies that seem to have taken into the equation nature, that they have considered the product that they've made and the material it is, and it's hopefully as toxic free as it can possibly be. And they're possibly giving back to nature when you make that purchase. This is what we do at My Green Pod, and I know you do something very similar. So offsetting is just absolutely rubbish. It's just a complete cop-out. What we can do is be conscious within the process. So I am taking something from nature, i.e. for that toilet roll that I need. Could I give back in exactly the same transaction? So there's a reciprocal co-creative relationship. That is about as simple as it gets.
Yeah, no, I like the co-creative idea. I think my challenge is personally, you've got what Will was talking about, the scientific one. I think people are always looking for scientific evidence, and they kind of think, well, if I have this, if I use this much in numbers of carbon, can I then give back this much numbers of carbon? And that makes everything line up zero. And it's so oversimplistic, as you've quite.
It doesn't work, but it doesn't work like that, because if you say plant a tree, you are putting a ton of carbon into the atmosphere because you've just gone on a flight, for example, and then you go and plant that tree. It takes 40 years for that tree to sequester that carbon. So actually, by the time it's actually done its job, well, it's too late anyway. So it is a risk. It's a climate risk. We need to be thinking much more, as Jarvis said, 7 generations time. I'm appalled and disgusted about how we are trying to put a massive band-aid over our consumption. really.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think the other thing is that lots and lots of people now, because we had the UN, was it Year of Restoration or something like that last year? So everyone's thinking about, oh, let's plant trees. Let's protect what we've got already. Number one. And actually, there were much better sequestration initiatives, sea kelps and mangroves, and to plant a tree in the UK is actually a very, very little benefit to the grand scheme of things. To plant a tree in the tropics is 10 times more efficient, but as Will has said, it's 20 to 40 years ahead of now. So yes, we've got to be thinking like that, but it's not going to actually stop the temperatures from rising today, which is what we need to do. We are potentially going to be over the threshold that all the governments are beginning to try and negotiate to agree through the Paris Agreement. We're going to be there by the middle of this century.
Oh, absolutely. I think the last IPCC report said in the next 10 years, isn't it? It's
exactly.
Going to be a massive change. So I think what Will was saying about the long-term effect on things, and we're being too short-term, is, hey guys, we're already in the short term here. If we don't do something like now to change the way that we consume products and make products and all of that, then I don't want to swear too much, but we're in trouble, aren't we, really?
We are. I think, sorry, Will, go on.
I was going to say, I think one of our problems is that we've got quite a few companies out there that are charging £1 a ton. And, they are, and some are saying you get a free subscription for the first 3 months, and then you only pay £1 a ton. And that is so detrimental to us mitigating our emissions, because if you don't know what it is that you don't know enough about this subject, then you will see that and think, actually, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do that. And actually, I feel good about myself. So that, you have these companies and people that are going, oh, it's okay, I feel really good about myself now, and it's only costing me £5 a month. And it's a bit like, it kind of doesn't work like that.
Exactly. It's the danger of being too numbers based and too science based and detaching as well. So all these phrases, net zero and all of that, trying to put it down to simplistic little terms, but not really understanding at depth what is going on and what the problems are. It's a real
I mean, the system's set up for us to be completely disconnected with nature, so that we can continue to rape and pillage her until she's going to throw us off, because we're the virus. The pandemic came about probably nature's way of going, guys, I'm going to give you a couple of warnings, but if you don't listen to them, then I'm just going to have to shake you off. So that's potentially what is occurring. Nature's way more intelligent than we are. It's been around longer than us, and it will be around way after us. And so we've got to just decide which part of this journey, which part in time do we want to be on this journey, with her or against her. So I mean, I'm not an expert in carbon offsetting, but just the very nature of its principles is actually a way to feed the shabby system that is killing us. So we'll have some really brilliant intellectual wise answers to what we can do. So educate us, Will.
As in,
if carbon offsetting is not the
reduce.
Bullet.
I think reduce. I think reduce. I think that Science Based Targets Initiative have got that nailed, and you just need to set your science-based targets and reduce your emissions. And there are many companies out there that are not fit for the future. I don't know if you know Fit for the Future program, but actually their whole system is actually very good if you go through it, and it ties in with what we're saying here. And I think that we do need to think about the way that we run our businesses and what it is that we're actually doing. And it goes back to the consumption that Jarvis was talking about earlier. But with money, we can work within those economic parameters. So why not, if you travel a lot or if you fly a lot, why not, instead of putting hundreds of thousands of pounds into offsetting, start investing into EasyJet or BA, buy shares in these companies, because they are the ones that are going to need that money in order to do R&D, in order to decarbonize their infrastructure. And I always find it slightly weird that a company that flies a lot will put money into something that doesn't really work, but yet they'll carry on flying. And then that flying company is going, hang on, we need more money in order to reduce our carbon. So have a think about what it is that you are procuring. And there's a very neat expression, insetting, And it's looking at your supply chain, understanding what is in your supply chain, and working collaboratively across that supply chain. And the larger companies are starting to do that more. And it's not just going to be down to one company, but if we work collaboratively to reduce those emissions, then we'll get there much quicker.
Yeah, agreed.
I think you've probably kind of answered, both of you, my next question, which was, what positive benefits can you see about carbon offsetting? Is there anything good about it at all?
Yeah, there is. There is the social benefits. Putting money into a village in Africa to help them with their cooking, heating, electricity is really positive. There are so many good projects out there that have massive social benefits. They're not environmental, so don't include it in your environmental impact, but that's not what life is about. It's not all about you. It's everything and it's everyone. And this is why I feel really bad and emotional about this subject, because I feel like I'm saying don't do that, but it is really good socially and you can't stop doing it. We got to help each other. You know, we're so privileged in the Western world, so privileged.
Yeah, I see it as being interconnected myself, as I said before. I mean, I think if you're helping people to have a better quality of life in places where they need that help, then you are helping the planet in a different kind of a way. And we have to grow together, don't we? We have to grow together. What about you, Jarvis? Can you see any positive benefits to offsetting?
Yeah, I mean, I would more of the same, but I would take it to a deeper level of nature. So, you know, I think the positive impact of giving back to nature is showing a conscious, you know, science has proven that nature is a conscious being. You know, we're seeing this from the David Attenborough green, blue, you know, all the different planets that he's done. You can see the aliveness of nature, right? So I think we need to stop discrediting her, Mother Nature, and the wisdom of Mother Nature, and actually get back to including her in decision making so that she can fix this problem easily. Humans are not going to fix this problem because we're actually arrogant and stupid. But nature. Well, the point of that is that, you know, we are trying to fix the problem with the same thinking that caused it in the first place.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
These statements have been around as long as time itself, but we are still too arrogant to be listening to them, right?
Yeah.
So clearly we are not wise enough to evolve. So we just need to stop what we're doing and let nature do its thing.
That's a really interesting way of putting it, definitely. It's funny enough, I went on a donut economics workshop last week, actually, with which was fantastic. And it was that we're sort of looking at our business and other businesses we work with and sort of trying to apply the framework of what are the different benefits. And it is that whole thing of I think we kind of were doing something similar without knowing it was that in the past, which is interesting. But I think for a lot of businesses, actually looking at things, other impacts, social impacts, environmental impacts, as well as the other things that they're doing, just as part of normal business as usual. It's part of that reset that you're talking about, isn't it?
It is. It's a mind and heart shift, and we are going through it, but just not quickly enough.
No, definitely not quickly enough.
We're looking for a FD at the moment, and a part of it is that I've written down is you need to be able to help us shift to a new economic paradigm. And because I think we do, I think it's accountants that are running these offsetting companies, and they are basically putting the P&L, profit and loss balance sheets onto nature and going, well, we can do, you know, and that doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
I think you used a brilliant line earlier about reduce, which is absolutely right. But I think we are going to see a massive shift in lots of businesses falling away.
Yeah.
You know, when we went into the pandemic, it turned out that 80% of the stuff that we were buying was non-essential. 80%.
Well, because we look at things, or we have looked at things in the past as rewards, and much different, without going too deeply into this, but we use items, stuff as I call it, for so many different reasons apart from what they're there for. It's emotional, isn't it? A lot of things. I need a new dress to make me feel better, you know. Yeah. I need to buy someone a stupid present that they don't want to show them that I love them, you know. There's all sorts of ridiculous things, but we're not thinking about the impacts of what we buy. In fact, I would add to the question I asked you guys about any positive impact from offsetting. I would say if in any way it makes somebody wake up to the fact that they are having an impact, then it's a positive. But there's obviously so many more negatives around that as well. So my next question, I'll ask Jarvis first, is what are the negative impacts of carbon offsetting?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think the very reason that Will pointed out earlier, that if people are offsetting because it makes them justify the damage that they're doing in the first place, that is really negative, because it's literally putting a plaster on rather than dealing with the root cause of the problem. So that's a negative one. I think there was a lot of, my wife calls this the second round or second phase of greenwashing. So now I love this, because there's a classic example of big businesses that are talking about their kind of, sustainable stuff that they're doing. But what's brilliant is that young people that are born into this as an issue, it's on the forefront of their minds, they're seeing straight through this and they're going, oh, you're doing that one pair of trainers out of the 20,000 pairs that you do are plastic recycled. I'm not buying from you anymore. So the negative impact is having actually a positive spin on stuff, or the negative spin is having a positive impact. So look, I'm a massively holistic outlook on life, right? I think that we are all going through this as a species because we've chosen to evolve with whatever is going to occur. We either do it with grace and humility, or it'll be absolute chaos and a shambles. And right now we're on the chaos and shambles. So that's the negative side of things as well.
What about you, Will? Have you got anything you'd like to say that's negative about carbon offsetting?
Where do I start, eh? So colonialism enabled the UK to profit from resources that were never ours to take. And now, once again, we seek to export our problems. We are currently in the biggest land grab in history. During COP, one of the unheard voices were from the indigenous environmental networks, and it was absolutely appalling about how they were not listened to. In Africa and Asia, governments and NGOs are stealing vast amounts and vast areas of land from tribal peoples and local communities under the false claim that is necessary for conservation. And even the UK's own government advisors are telling them that it is an ineffective way when it comes down to mitigation. So the UK government know that this is not effective, but yet they're still pushing it forwards. And I think we need to start to listen to the Indigenous Environmental Network about what is going on. And I've got a great quote here from them. And the green economy regime places the monetary price on nature and creates new derivative markets that will only increase in inequality and increase the destruction of Mother Earth. We cannot put the future of nature and humanity in the hands of financial speculative mechanisms, such as using the forest in agriculture as carbon offsets. For example, called reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation are better known as REDD, REDD, and other market systems of conservation are biological offsets and payment for environmental and ecological services. Here in California, there is a growing concern of California Global Warming Solutions Act, AB, carries on to say, for people living close to the Chevron refinery to have to endure more pollution and their communities causing long-term health problems such as asthma, birth defects, cancer, and depression, REDD prolongs these impacts by making offsets available to these polluting companies, allowing them to avoid their emissions at source. It's, so there was a carbon credit scheme in Australia that thankfully was vetoed, but it's been put back onto the table to see if it can go through. And that is to give carbon credits for killing the camels that are there. And so you'll have possibly B Corps in the UK that are going, oh yeah, we're really green, we're carbon positive, we buy our offsets. And if that was to go through, they could potentially be killing camels in Australia to be more environmental. So making claims of carbon neutrality, net zero, carbon positive, or other such terms through use of offsets is just misleading and can and does lead customers to believe that they're helping to reduce climate heating through purchase of goods and services, leading to increased consumption. I think we need to be really careful. And there are a lot of people making a lot of money. I believe, and I'm not going to name names, but one of the big offsetting companies in this country is owned by Morgan Stanley.
Wow.
Need I say any more?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some research on this as well. And some of those, some of the big organizations like the Amazons and, they're all connected with this carbon offsetting group that actually, if you look under the hood, it's definitely not what it's meant to be. So, we've got to do our research and really dig deep and learn from our mistakes.
And if there's profits involved in those kind of things, then I'm not being funny, but they can't be good. It can't be good, can it? If someone's making huge amounts of profits out of doing these things that are supposed to be protecting our environment, protecting the people who need protecting, then it's a no-brainer. It can't be good. So yeah. That's the simple way of looking at it. I mean, I'm interested in what you're saying there, Will, that sort of struck a chord with me very much around pushing the problem away somewhere else. So I'm a company, I'm doing something hideous, which is causing a problem. So I'll buy some offsets. Somebody else in the world, some other place in the world is going to suffer. I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing and having the negative effects. And those effects will then impact somebody else. It's like when we dump all of our rubbish in Malaysia and it ends up polluting local environment in Malaysia and other places too. So is that not in my backyard thing all over again, isn't it? But with regards to offsetting. And I know with my next question is around the global impacts of offsetting. I was looking up some charts this morning on the World Economic Forum about the global disparity of carbon footprints, basically. So United States, not surprisingly, the most massive carbon footprints. I think we come down, we're not too bad.
We're about 6th, aren't we?
Yeah, 6th or 7th on this particular chart. But when you're looking at countries in Northern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, they've got virtually no carbon footprint. And they're the ones who we are making pay through just how Will just said for our problems. So what do you guys, go to Will first, how can carbon offsetting affect these people and what can we do about it?
Well, don't offset. It's kind of simple, really. I don't think it does. It is helpful. I think just don't offset. Just look at what you're consuming. I mean, it really isn't rocket science. It really isn't. Just look at what you're consuming and reduce it and consume less. And go to My Green Pod and buy the stuff on that particular website because the research is being done for you. There are people out there that have done the research. It is really complicated and it is really hard because you've got some companies that will say that they're really green and some companies that will say they're really green. What is it? Well, Jarvis and his team have put something together and actually thought about it all and intelligently, curated what it is that we can procure without needing to think about it. So, we're there. So why aren't we doing it?
Yes, I mean, well, the interesting answer to that, as I'm sure we all know far too much here about, is greenwashing. So that we know that there's so many different organisations. I banged my head against the wall. I was talking to a prospective customer this morning who wanted tote bags, 1,000 tote bags. I'm like, well, why do you want 1,000 tote bags? But we'll go beyond that. How are we going to make them in the best possible way for the planet? Using renewable energy, using indigenous cottons and those kind of things. That'll cost you blah. Oh no, I can get them down the road from such and such a place for half that price. That was me silently screaming for anybody listening. So having those conversations, because with greenwashing, people honestly believe that if something is sustainable or planet friendly or natural, these things are there, and we see it all the time, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I think, it's great that we're even having this. I mean, if you were to talk about carbon footprint 10 years ago, people would just look at you like blurry-eyed going, what the hell are you talking about? But so I think, and thanks for bigging us up, Will, but I would also big up, compare your footprint because, if people can begin to look at, what is carbon intensive within their business or their lifestyles, and then what can you do to reduce that? There's so many brilliant things that have happened of late. I know the question was about the global impact, but I think Will has just very easily, succinctly said, just don't offset and, just try and get into reducing in your own lives and in your own businesses. that there's a massive opportunity there. 65 possibly %, depending on what figures you're looking at, is human behavior. 65% of the problem is human behavior, and the rest of it is split between the technologies that we use and the fossil fueled, the oil industries. So 65% is human behavior. That's massive.
It's all down to personal choice, isn't it? It's down to how we choose to do things and how we choose to behave, whether you do need to fly to the other side of the world, whether you do need 1,000 tote bags. I mean, when customers come to me and they say we haven't got a budget for 1,000 tote bags, I say, well, why don't you buy a less then? If you really, really need to buy something, why don't you just buy a lot less of them? Because to be honest, you don't really need them. Nobody needs that many tote bags. This is from somebody who sells tote bags. It's just crazy. But yeah, no, it's a difficult. It's the changes that we need to make, and the way that we all need to think about what we do. And people talk about every little change helps, and I guess it does, but we need some huge, massive changes as well, don't we?
And there are lots of companies out there. We became a B Corp back in 2015, and I got to know Hermione from Do Nation through that network, and Do Nation are brilliant. I'm really good friends with Christian from Paw Prints. They're really good. You've got so many good people out there that are helping you with those decisions and helping you be more informed. And it is a case of just finding those companies. But I was chatting to someone the other day at the Business and Community, and we were talking about how we get SMEs onto the journey. I mean, we're free to anyone up with a turnover under £300,000. We're free. And but it's actually getting them to our site to measure. It's getting them on that journey. How do we actually get them there? Because 80% of the people that aren't doing anything don't even know about where to go or what to do. And it's communicating to them, and it's trying to and that's the bit I struggle with and I grapple with, because I feel that we probably, we all know each other through different WhatsApp groups, we're all in the same bubbles, we're talking to the same people. So it's a bit like, how do we get out of those bubbles and move into different bubbles?
Education is massively important. It really is. And unfortunately, we are fighting against, this machine that drives this false economy that's killing us. So, so it's really down to each individual to take responsibility for themselves, and then try and inspire their immediate networks, family and friends and people on the street, and but so you're right. But anyway,
I was just going to say, it's making it simple for people, because I think people are scared, aren't they? People find the whole idea, most people don't even know what carbon is. And I'm not being funny, but our education system, I mean, the current generation are learning a lot more about these issues, but maybe we didn't, and maybe people don't understand that. So it's finding simple ways. I'm going to ask you both to send me some links afterwards, and I'll put them in the podcast blurb so people can find out things about it. But it's taking those first steps, as Will said, and getting to understand about impacts. And then the key thing is, obviously, as we've all agreed, reduce. We'll take that away with us as a 3. If Greta can say blah blah blah, we can say reduce.
Yeah,
and that can be the key thing. So just as a final question, then, I think we've kind of covered pretty much everything on offsetting. You've talked about reducing. Can you think of any other things that people can be doing to sit aside offsetting to help us reduce our carbon, apart from reduce?
I think investing in new technologies that help us with that global transition. So, putting money into electric planes, and there are some very good technologies out there. I had a guy on our podcast that mines lithium, and they do it in the most sustainable way that they can in areas of the world. And some would say that mining isn't sustainable at all, but we need the lithium, and if we're going to do it, let's do it properly. But what struck me was, he said that there are some small companies out there that can take a lithium battery from a car completely take it apart and put it back together again without using any more resources, and it's actually will have more charge than it did to start off with. So, you know, technology is getting to the point where we are, you know, we're getting there. And I think blockchain will come into its own within sustainability. You're already seeing it within the supply chain. And I think that keeping, you know, investing into that and helping us move forwards whilst also reducing, and set your science-based targets. If you're a company, listen, set your science-based targets. Simple as, it's not rocket science. Set it. You can do it through Compare Your Footprint. So just set your science-based targets, or at least you can do in about a month's time. But yeah.
It's on its way.
That general idea of not talking about net zero, but having that transparency in those targets. I mean, for me, where does it come from school? Where does it come from? For a good reason. And we're all about transparency. And I think that is what it is. It's that like being transparent about what you're aiming to do, transparent about what you're doing, and then doing it, I suppose, basically. Jarvis, what about you? What other things would you recommend alongside, well, getting rid of offsetting, but instead of offsetting?
Yeah, I think the research, you know, going deeper into the firstly the business model that you've got, and then the supply chains and the ingredients, and you know, all of that from a personal perspective. You know, we've talked about that massively, but I think what Will has highlighted is that the answers are all there, but we might have to dig a little bit deeper to find them. We might have to pay a little bit more to use them. But what's the cost to our future generations? So, you know, we've just got to change our mindset now and think about, actually, you know, we need to be in an age of restoration. What makes that happen? It's about us taking responsibility and making completely different life choices, business choices, so that we can actually be really pleased when we're on our deathbeds that we've done every single thing that we possibly can to give to our future generations. And really, I'm quite selfish about this. It's for my children, but by default, it's for every child on the planet. You know, so it's really waking up and not listening to all of the propaganda, the advertising, the Hollywood films, all that rubbish that feeds us with a narrative that it makes us feel good to have nice things. No, it makes us feel good to know that our children have a future.
Yeah, so true. I mean, that chimes so well with stuff that I'm involved with the ethical fashion movement. You know, this whole psychological benefits of buying new clothes. And if you choose an item, I mean, clothing or whatever, and you're making that choice from a different place within yourself, so you're choosing something about its positive impacts and how you're going to value it and how you're going to keep it for your life cycle, and you understand who made it and all of that kind of thing, you value that yourself on a deeper level. You love that item more, you get more joy out of it, it's better for your mental health, and then when you're done with it, it's good enough quality, it can go on to someone else, or it can be upcycled or even recycled or whatever. And it's taking those efforts, as you both have said, that dig deep, find out more, get more personally involved. None of this stuff that we have at the moment, you just, oh, I fancy this, I'll go into a shop, I'll put it in my bag, I buy it. There's no emotional connection there at all. So I've started ranting now. I feel really strongly about that whole emotional connection thing with what you're buying. All the things in our lives are connected to us and in loads of different ways, and we have to be involved in that and not I suppose resign from that process. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm very well aware we've come to our time now. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Would you both like to give a bit of a name drop to your organizations again?
I don't really. Well,
I'll put some links into all of your organizations anyway.
I think for me, I will not about My Green Pocket. We talk loads about that, but we actually run the PEA Awards, the People, Environment and Achievement Awards, and it's about honouring individuals and teams that are really making a difference. And so if you've got friends or family or co-workers or, you know, people in your business, or you yourself consider yourself as a superhero when it comes to sustainability, then enter yourself into the P Awards. It's free to enter. We've made it accessible to everybody, and we're in our 12th year. And that's all we do, is honor people that are doing great life-changing commitments to the sustainable movement that we so badly need with the runaway climate. So there we are.
Thank you. But also I think that's so important, because as we've shown ourselves, you can get quite down. You can get into a spiral of, you know, it's depressing. There's lots of things going wrong. So much work needs to be done. But actually, hearing some of the positive stories, patting people on the back, that can really give you a lift and motivate you. And also, we've had other speakers on the Where Does It Come From podcast, people from Extinction Rebellion and things like that, who talk about when you do join with other people, it becomes a society. It gives you strength and growth, and don't be afraid. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it gives you that kind of, you're part of something bigger and not on the outside. So I think those things are really important.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add, Will?
On accountability, I'm actually petrified that, because I don't think any of us are perfect, and I don't know about you guys, but I pick holes in everything I do on a regular basis, and if you think about it too much, you can actually get quite down on yourself, because you just think, I can do better at that, so I can do better at that, I can do better at that, and it's I think probably I know we've been talking about reducing your consumption, but don't get down on yourself. You know, try and do the best that you can do.
Yeah.
But be happy. Be happy. Please be happy. Be content with where you are. Be content with what is going on, because a happy person is more likely to make a change than someone that's not happy.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well-being is paramount.
Yeah, and you can get stuck in that kind of analysis paralysis and all of those different things if you're not trying. It's having that positivity and that energy to want to do something for the right reasons, the love of nature, the love of planet that we feel. So that's good. Anyway, thank you both so much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been wonderful having you here. For anyone listening, I'll be putting links to both these guys' organizations and a little bit more about them on the podcast blurb that comes with this. I'm going to upload this conversation onto YouTube so you can look at the faces we've been pulling while we've been talking and that kind of thing as well. So with that, I'll just say thank you very much, guys, for joining us on the Where Does It Come From podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you. Nice to see you both.